Village Bake Shop, open from 6 to 6 Monday through Friday and 6 to 5 on Saturday. The Village Bake Shop's located at the Village Green Town Center and has been satisfying Cleveland's sweet tooth since 1961. Give them a call at 476-5179 or come and see them at the Village Green Town Center.
Brownies, cupcakes, wedding and birthday cakes, muffins, pies.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
Are we back on?
You're on.
No, I'm sorry.
Good morning, everyone. We're back. Anyway, we get in these heavy conversations. Sometimes we forget that we were talking about, or John was talking about Christie.
The New Jersey sent out a typical Christie warning to residents. He said, look, if you're in the coastal areas, you need to leave. If you're reluctant to leave, if you know anyone that rode out the 1962 hurricane, ask them if they could do it again. And then third, if you're reluctant to leave, think about your loved ones. Think about the rescue workers who will not be able to come get you when you make the panicked 911 call tonight. Think about the rescue workers that will have to try to save you tomorrow or recover your remains if you don't survive. I mean, it was a blunt, to the point message, which I think is probably pretty appropriate.
I think Christie is going to end up as a hero in this matter, because I think he has really worked hard to warn people and worked hard to try to get as much done for New Jersey and the people there. And also, he's even come out and given President Obama some high marks based on what's happened so far. So,
well, as big of a supporter as he's been for Mitt Romney, he said, look, I don't have time for politics right now. I have a tragedy in my state, and I've got work to do.
I think that's what makes Christie kind of special. He just kind of tells it like it is. When he's got something on his mind, he attacks the issues at the time, and he leaves the politics out of it. I mean, pretty much so. I mean, he gets focused on what has to happen. So.
Well, I will say I don't normally care for Mayor Bloomberg in New York a whole lot, but I know that President Obama had called and wanted to come to New York to look, and Bloomberg said, look, we appreciate you offering to come, but we don't have the resources in our police and our rescue people to be able to accommodate a presidential visit right now.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that was very
that was a wise
really considering his people.
Yeah. We get into I can get into this Libyan attack again, and I just hate going backwards, but
it's not going backwards.
Well,
we don't know what happened yet.
There's a lot of stuff going on with this. First of all, I guess my question is, has Secretary of State Hillary Clinton failed her job?
Well, the problem is we don't know who failed, because we've gotten multiple stories from multiple agencies. We have conflicting facts. We even have conflicting statements. Right now, the Secretary of Defense, Panetta, is actually conflicting with statements the President has made about when the order was given and what they did. You have a slain Navy SEAL's father basically saying, look, I feel like I've been lied to, and I'll forgive you, but I just want someone to tell me the truth.
Yeah.
And I think, you're not going to like this answer, but that's a reflection of what we're talking about. It's a complicated issue that's going to require some serious investigation, and I'm all for that.
Well, I mean, but you can't have time to have an investigation when you have a crisis like this happening. Why did nothing happen?
Actually, Charles Krauthammer made a really, the president's getting some high marks right now for managing some of, there's not really a lot for the federal government to manage, and that was part of what Romney had talked about on the state level. These governors like Christie, mayors like Bloomberg have to manage this. But he's been in the Situation Room managing this. The problem is he hadn't been in the Situation Room for over 45 days after we were attacked on multiple locations around the world. So he can go to the Situation Room for a photo op during a hurricane when there's not really a lot he could do, but he can't go to the Situation Room the day after a U.S. ambassador is killed for the first time in 25 years.
Well,
Franklin, he skipped his daily security briefing the morning of the attack.
Look, John.
The attack's going on, and he didn't meet with them.
You throw these attacks out like that's got some meaning, whether he was in this room or not.
He didn't meet with them. He went to Las Vegas for a fundraiser.
There's a reason, John. First of all, presidents get briefings where they need to be
Actually,
briefed.
he's missed 60% of all of his briefings.
Number two.
60%, Franklin.
Number two, John. When something's going on that potentially affects 40 million people, yeah, you expect that the president's going to be involved in that.
I know, because the death of 4 Americans is just a bump in the road to this president.
I didn't say that, John, and you know that's not what I mean.
That's what he said. That's what Obama said. It was a bump in the road. 4 dead people, and now we're finding out they were begging for help, and they got no support.
What we're finding out is that there were many different messages being sent, as you pointed out a moment ago.
From the same administration.
As you pointed out a moment ago, with different requests being made.
Actually, let me quote the president for you, Franklin. For 6 weeks, the president said the morning after the attack, he ordered increased security in our embassies in the region. But guess what? On October 26, just a few days ago, he changed his story and said, the minute I found out what was happening, I gave the directive to make sure that we are securing our personnel and doing whatever we need to do. Well, the problem is, we don't know why for 6 hours they sat in the room watching real-time images of our people being killed and our compound, which, by the way, folks, is U.S.
They, John?
Panetta.
Okay.
And actually, if you want to know, all of it was being bounced. Let me read it to you. All of it was being bounced to Panetta, to the CIA, to the Defense Department, to the State Department. They were all getting it. And when Panetta comes out and says, oh, we have the fog of war, we can't send men in because we don't know, guess what? The former Navy SEAL was on the ground with a laser pointer identifying targets and phoning in coordinates, and he got no support until he was killed.
The CIA reported 3 requests for help, and each of them were denied.
Well, we've now found out that the 2 drones were unarmed drones. Now, the first drone is understandable because it was already in the air, but it was running low on fuel by the time it got to Benghazi, so they launched another drone. Well, why wouldn't you have launched an armed drone? I mean, who in their right mind sits there and watches our compound being attacked and doesn't launch an armed drone?
It's hard to realize whether this was just a major screw-up.
I agree with you. That, you know, there's not.
I mean, if it was a major screw-up, there's something wrong with our system, because our system, the SEALs, the Navy, the Air Force, everybody is on dead ready. That's all they do is get ready for something like this. I know when I was in the military, every day we trained for an emergency. We went out on maneuvers. We did all kinds of stuff. I was in the Signal Corps. But, you know, that's what our job was to be ready for something like this if it happened. And it's a matter of somebody giving an order and somebody moving.
But it's also a matter of them being in close enough proximity for it to make a difference.
Our embassy in Tripoli, which is 400. No, we can talk about distance, Franklin. Tripoli embassy is 400 miles away. They sent an aircraft with 6 Americans to fight in Benghazi. But our air base in Sigonella, Italy, 480 miles away, sent no help. This went on for 8 hours. The SEAL, former SEAL on the ground, was giving real-time information to everyone listening in at least 8 operation centers: the embassy in Tripoli, the State Department, the White House, the Pentagon, the CIA, the Special Operations Command, the Africa Command, and the National Ops Center. All were getting real-time information on this, and nobody responded.
And it is also true that it's not that easy to launch some sort of military strike in the middle of a city.
You mean the strike that we got bin Laden with? Was that easy? In the middle of a country?
That was planned for 6 or 9 months in advance before we did it, John. That's
but did they know everything going on the ground going in there? Because Panetta says they don't send men in unless they know everything on the ground. Can't y'all see the next time a corporal is ordered in Afghanistan to go out on patrol, he says, you know what? Secretary of Defense says we don't have to go out if we don't know everything.
You know, in the military, you can call for air backup. You know, there's lots of things that
the Navy SEAL had the laser pointer, which, Franklin, you know this. The laser pointer is how they guide the missiles to the target. He was on the ground with the laser pointer going, send in help.
The Navy SEAL went against direct orders
to save fellow Americans.
To save the fellow Americans, was found dead, laying across the top of a machine gun.
The machine gun was literally covered in blood, which means he fought after he was injured.
Yeah, it's a sad deal. I hope these two SEALs, without a doubt, receive the highest awards possible.
Well,
now they went against an order, but they did what they felt they needed to do, what they were trained to do.
I certainly haven't heard any criticism of them.
Well, of course not. But we've got the same people saying we couldn't go in there because we weren't, we didn't know what was the issues on the ground was. These men didn't know what the issues on the ground were either. And they defied an order to let their fellow Americans die. And they went in, they saved, apparently 30 or 40 people were actually saved. These two men died because they disobeyed the orders from the commanders at home, Obama's people, who were telling them, let them die.
And in the military, when you go against a direct order, that's a court-martial.
Well, the only thing that saves these guys probably is they're actually retired military. They were independent contractors. But Franklin, here's a real easy thing. The president said for 6 weeks that he gave the order the next morning. Now he's changed his story and said he gave the order immediately, which would have been within the hour, because that's when he says he was in the room. Here's the point, though, Franklin. I know you're wrinkling your brow.
No, what I'm saying to you is
why doesn't the president release a copy of the order? Because obviously he either didn't give the order or somebody disobeyed the order, because he says that he ordered them to do everything possible to get in there and save our people. So somebody either didn't give the order, which would be the president, or somebody disobeyed the order. All he has to do is release the order.
What I was about to say, John, is that this was all happening at 4 o'clock in the morning here.
Yeah, isn't that what Hillary said when the phone rings at 4 o'clock in the morning? Who do you want answering the phone?
I mean, Leon Panetta came out and said that, they did not have enough information about what was happening on the ground. Now, they were sitting there watching this live.
Well,
they had to know.
The reports that I have seen, in fairness, is that there was an initial assault on this embassy, and then it appears that other people started joining in to it. The reports that I've seen were, after the initial assault was made, that it, in fact, wasn't very coordinated, that it did appear to take on a sort of a mob approach to it. It was coming in lots of different directions.
Well, guess what, Franklin? A Hellfire missile into that mob might have saved our Americans.
Yeah. Well, that's not as easy as it sounds.
Well, it's easy when you have a Navy SEAL on the ground with a missile pointer that guides the Hellfire missile to its site.
Well, was it a Navy SEAL or was it a contractor?
It's a former Navy SEAL. I'm sorry, when you retire from the Navy SEALs, you don't lose your training.
Well, there is a difference in terms of whether you're talking about our active duty military personnel contacting the active duty military supporting
I'm sure that explanation will give a lot of comfort to the families of the people who died.
No,
because
John.
we couldn't take the laser pointer accuracy of the retired Navy SEAL because he wasn't an active Navy SEAL.
It's just the fantasy world that you live in, where you think all somebody has to do is make a phone call and we launch a military strike in the middle of a city.
Well, he didn't have a problem doing that. He doesn't have a problem launching drones all over. Matter of fact, Franklin, your own good liberal people say that this president has killed thousands of innocent citizens with his drone attacks.
Which means that he doesn't have a hesitation in doing that
unless, of course, it's going to embarrass him that his entire Middle East policy is falling apart.
What does that have to do with his Middle East policy?
Because that's why they didn't react, and that's why they said it was a story. It was based on this movie, because they couldn't admit that they screwed up in the Middle East.
If his Middle East policy were falling apart, John, why would there have been the next day demonstrations with tens of thousands of Libyans chanting pro-American slogans and waving the American flag in support of us if his policy was falling apart?
The problem with his policy is that he's allowed Al-Qaeda, which he's tried to claim he decimated, he's allowed Al-Qaeda to regrow. And it was Al-Qaeda that did this, and that's what they don't want to admit, because he's been on the campaign stump for months saying, I destroyed Al-Qaeda.
They have not been able to determine that Al-Qaeda did this.
Well, Al-Qaeda says they did it.
All right, let me.
So did several
In fact,
other
they
groups.
said it while it was going on. Franklin, they said it while it was going on.
Which, of course, means it's true. They try and take credit all the time.
Well, actually, Franklin, we've already arrested several people who are in Al-Qaeda who have been supposedly involved in. And guess what, Franklin? This is another great little tidbit.
Investigating.
The president said that he was going to close Guantanamo Guantanamo Bay. We've got a guy that helped kill our American citizens in Benghazi right now that's sitting in a prison over there because we don't have any policy in place to move him anywhere. The president said he would close Guantanamo, and because
your party opposed
Listen to me, Franklin. Because he said that, he shut down all of the military detention rules. So now we don't have an avenue to actually take possession of this guy. The guy's been in jail for over 3 weeks since this attack happened, and we can't take him because this president has no policy to allow us to accept prisoners.
And we can't waterboard either, get any information from him. Colonel David Hunt, military analyst, said that the military could have had jets in the air within 20 minutes. They could have had forces on the ground in 2 hours.
It went on for 8 hours. And matter of fact, there's a good chance that our ambassador was alive for 4 to 6 of those hours.
It goes on to say that the issue is always political with the White House, but the Secretary of Defense gives the order. It has to be approved by the White House. They wouldn't pull the trigger, and that's disgraceful.
But that's the problem, though, Steve. This president just the other day
does
said
story-
that he did
does
pull the
this story
trigger.
Does this story say that the Secretary of Defense asked the White House to give them
No.
permission? It doesn't say
but
that.
It says that
Franklin.
that's the way it comes down.
Okay.
It says that the Secretary
That's
of
right.
Defense gives the order, and it goes to the president for final approval.
But the point is, the
And
president.
so did he give that order or not?
I don't know.
And
But
that's what we're
Franklin,
saying. And
no.
And that's a fair thing to look at. And nobody
before or
would
after
say
the
otherwise.
election? Before or after the election?
Yeah, before or after the election.
Don't you think this is a significant
why has the president
event?
not even made
Press conference.
a press conference about this matter? That's what blows my mind. Why he ain't even had a press conference about it?
The fact of the matter is the president on the campaign stump said he gave the order immediately. So that's my point, Franklin. If the Secretary of Defense decided not to obey that order, then he should have transmitted that back to the White House.
You're
Did he?
talking
You know
about
why?
a
You know
different
why the
order,
president had made a press conference about this, John?
Because he can't explain it.
No, let me tell you why. Because if you're going to lie, you just don't speak. Let's take a call. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
John,
Yes, sir.
you're fighting a losing battle there with those two Republicans because they're hardened against what your point that you're trying to prove. So you're fighting a losing battle.
Yeah, but I tell you what, I tell my kids, you don't fight a battle because you're going to win. You fight a battle because it's the right thing to do.
Well, the right thing to do is to get all the facts together before everybody starts making comments and statements, and they're still working on getting the facts together on what happened. And they didn't know the morning that this happened, and Franklin's trying to make it sound like the president knew all about this thing for hours before he put the order out, and that's just not true at all.
You know, this is like, for months in here, we argued about the Fast and Furious thing. And what kept being saying, all the way up to the president, the attorney general, this is just some massive cover-up. Well, you know what? There was something serious to be investigated in Fast and Furious, and there still is, and that's still ongoing. And there are people who made big mistakes who ought to be held accountable for that. But now we don't talk about anymore that it's a cover-up by the Attorney General in the White House because it turns out the investigation showed that wasn't the case.
That's not true, Franklin.
It is
the
true.
investigation by the Attorney General found the Attorney General innocent. Amazing, isn't it?
Amazingly enough, that all the Republican critics who were blasting the Attorney General have stopped doing that, and they've turned their attention to where the mistakes were really being made.
Well,
that doesn't mean we shouldn't investigate. It doesn't mean we shouldn't hold people accountable. But it does mean when you make a rush to judgment and something
Franklin,
that's
how are you going to investigate?
you will probably mess it up.
How are you going to investigate when the president exerts executive privilege over most of the relevant documents?
Well, that's not true. He didn't.
He did.
No,
on the
he
cover
didn't,
up.
John.
Franklin, he covered up all of
No,
the
he
documents after the fact.
after the fact.
No. You're missing. You know exactly what I'm saying.
No,
they released the documents, some of the documents involved in the actual operation, but every document after it came to light, which would expose the cover-up, he exerted executive privilege over.
There's two people going to come down about this. I think Hillary Clinton's going to look bad.
She already looks bad.
I know, and I think they're going to shift blames everywhere they can. Leon Panetta,
they've already set the generals up as well.
Well, somebody's going to take a fall over this one, and I guarantee you it won't be the president.
I mean, Franklin, here's one problem. The president for 6 weeks said one thing. He said the day after he issued a directive to do everything possible. Last week, he changed his story and said he immediately, while he was in the room, which was an hour into the attack, gave the order. Well, the point is, which is true? That's his own words, Franklin. For 6 weeks, he said the day after he issued a directive. Now he's saying he immediately issued a directive. Which Obama is telling the truth?
Well, again, I'm pointing out that you're talking about something that was happening in 4 o'clock in the morning. So when you're talking about him doing it, if he does it at 7 a.m., is that the next day or is that the same day?
Oh, you
that's
mean like
the kind of issue that we're talking about.
Is?
No, I just think that's what we're talking about.
Well, you know what,
here.
Franklin, all of this could be settled if the president simply had a press conference on it.
Actually, that's right. Franklin, really and truly, can you understand why he has not done a press conference about this matter?
Well,
would you think that any president in the world would have had a press conference about something like this, just to talk about it?
First ambassador killed on U.S. soil, which is what an embassy is, in 29 years.
Well, he took questions
from People magazine
at 3 presidential debates on this issue, with 3
a press conference,
with
Franklin, an official press conference,
just like he did about the storm coming. Same thing.
Official press conference.
I think the answer is because we still don't have all the facts together.
Well, don't you think he has all the facts together?
No, I don't think he does.
Well, then he's incompetent.
Do you think that he ought to at least come on the air? Do you think he ought to at least come on the air and give sympathy for the people that were killed,
and he has
we are going to get to the bottom of this?
By the way, said that about 40 times.
Let me give you the type of sympathy that this administration gives.
Let reporters ask questions.
When they're
bringing, that's not an expression of sympathy.
When they're bringing the bodies back and they land those coffins in Andrews Air Force Base, and these families are out there, and the president's there, and the vice president's there, and the secretary of state's there, Joe Biden walks up to one of the fathers of the Navy SEAL killed and says loudly to everybody standing around, and folks, y'all have to excuse the vulgarity of this, but this is the vice president's words. He says, "Hey, did your son always have balls the size of cue balls?" That's the vice president of the United States talking to a father grieving over his son's casket who's just returned after sacrificing his life to save fellow Americans. That's the kind of sympathy and that's the kind of attitude that the vice president showed. Franklin, that's disgusting. And it's insulting, and it's beneath the office of the presidency, and it's beneath the office of the vice presidency. But that's what we've got in office right now.
Anyway, frankly, I know we're beating up on you on this Libya deal. There's really nothing you can say to defend that. You ought to just go ahead and agree with us.
I'm not defending anything. Well, that's what you always say. I always agree with that.
Well, it's there's so much that's wrong with this. There's so much stink coming from this story that it's obvious.
Well, the disgusting part, and one of the reasons, Franklin, you see congressmen not talking about Fast and Furious anymore, and you'll see it with this too, is papers like the New York Times won't cover this. Matter of fact, their own ombudsman actually criticized them for their choice of front page stories instead of the Benghazi case. Frankly, it's their own ombudsman criticized them.
The facts are that, like the Fast and Furious circumstance, the truth is going to come out. And the truth is often different from the initial conclusions that people jump to. And I'm sorry that investigations don't happen on the schedule you would like them to happen. When somebody's murdered, their family wants justice right away.
Well, let me ask
it doesn't always happen.
I know, but Franklin, let me ask you a question. Yeah. When there's a murder suspect, does he get to say, "I'll produce the evidence"? I'll give my statement in 6 months or 8 months or a year, because that's what the Attorney General did with Fast and Furious. He drug that out for over a year and a half.
But what you leap over, John, is the facts that all of the documents about setting up Fast and Furious, how it was carried out, were all supplied on the front end.
But
hold on.
None of the documents
and
about
the
cover-up.
You guys want, there was no cover-up.
Well, we don't know because he exerted executive privilege.
No, we do know.
How do we know that,
John.
Franklin?
Because the documents that weren't supplied were documents that related to ongoing investigations in other areas.
They were executive office documents.
That's what they were.
The president said he didn't have anything to do with it.
And the facts are
Franklin,
that
the president said he didn't have anything to do with the operation.
And the documents that were produced established conclusively when the Attorney General learned about this issue.
But Franklin,
and it was after it had happened.
You're right. So the point is...
And so your suggestion was always, that he was involved, he did it, he was involved, he did it.
Well, one, Franklin...
And then the proof was he didn't.
One, if he didn't know, he's actually derelict in his duties. And this was an operation that involved sending guns across a international border into another country.
And
so that is incompetence.
Committee being run by Republicans have backed off this issue now because the documents didn't support what they were claiming.
Franklin. Here's the point.
If
the president didn't even know about it as they exert, then why is there any executive privilege over the documents after that?
Because the post documents
would be the cover-up. The post documents would uncover the cover-up. And Franklin, I'm sure
you can only hope you're
right. All of this will come out. The only problem is the Democrats and Obama hope it only comes out after the election.
We're coming up on the magic hour here, but I wanted to. I've got the top 10 reasons to dislike Mitt Romney. I want to talk about. He's drop dead handsome with gracious statesman-like air. Looks like every Central Casting's #1 choice for commander-in-chief. Been married to one woman his entire life and been faithful to her, including her bouts with breast cancer and MS. No scandals or skeleton in his closet. God, how boring is that? Can't speak in fake Southern black preacher voice when necessary. Highly intelligent, graduated cum laude from both Harvard Law School and Harvard Business School. And by the way, his academic records are not sealed. Doesn't smoke or drink alcohol, has never done drugs, not even in the college days. Represents an America of yesterday where people believed in God, went to church, didn't screw around, worked hard, and became a success. Has a family of 5 great sons, and none of them have police records or in drug rehab. But of course, they were raised by a stay-at-home mom, and that choice deserves America's scorn. Oh, yes, he's a Mormon. We need to be very afraid of that very strange religion that teaches its members to be clean living, patriotic, physically conservative, charitable, self-reliant, and honest. And one more point. Putin say because of his wealth, he can't relate to the ordinary Americans. I guess that's because he's made that money himself as opposed to marrying it or inheriting it from a dad.
Well, actually, there was a study came out by Forbes magazine as well as, I think, Bloomberg magazine that had Romney not gone into public service when he left Bain Capital to save the Olympics, which he did, and run for a governor of Massachusetts, he would actually be worth $2 billion right now.
Which, how many of those things on that list wouldn't apply to President Obama? Is he a bad family man?
Well, actually, I don't know.
Is he not good looking?
Franklin, I don't know. Let's talk about the ad where he has
answer my question.
I know, but the father of 2 little girls has authorized an ad talking about voting for the first time with all kinds of sexual innuendos.
And comparing it to sex. Your first sex.
Is that like a good thing?
Is that something
are you going to tell me now that President Obama's been a bad husband and father?
I'm telling you that what kind of campaign runs an ad?
Are you saying that
comparing voting to the first time with sex?
Are you saying that his education, which is the same as the other guys,
well, we don't know. Actually, Franklin, we don't know that because he won't release his college transcripts.
We don't know anything about it.
You can look at Mitt Romney's transcripts.
Why would he not give the $5 million?
The same reason the last president didn't release his.
No, wait a minute.
The same reason the one before that didn't list it.
If I offered you $5 million for your college records and your copy of your passport,
not him,
to give
charity,
to give to any charity you want, you'd be all over producing that information to give it to a charity.
Why? Because Donald Trump's a nut.
Well, wait a minute. That ain't got anything to do.
Are we going to chase every nut idea out there?
$5 million. I'm telling you, a charity would love that. Why would he not do that for a charity?
Because Donald Trump.
No, wait a minute. Forget
Donald Trump.
What's the downside to it, though?
Well, because you can't forget Donald Trump. It's a cheap political stunt.
But what's the downside?
$5 million. Okay. What's the downside of that?
Here's the great part, Franklin. If Donald Trump's such an idiot, then you put these wonderful college records out there. There's absolutely nothing wrong in them, and you take $5 million of the idiot's money and give it to a charity.
Prove him
What's
wrong.
the downside?
I would say that this president's going to make a lot of money for charities.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't you take the $5 million just for doing that?
I mean, if there's nothing wrong with the records, then
that's what y'all said about the birth certificate too. The question really becomes is how long does this president have to deal with these persistent attempts to just delegitimize?
Well, I don't
him?
know. How long does he get to blame President Bush?
As long as he wants to.
Well, then,
as long as
he doesn't produce the goods.
Well,
all right, we're going to have to go, but I've got something I want to say real quick. Tonight is Halloween. I want everybody to be careful. The streets might be crowded. Drive carefully tonight. I want to announce there's a big party downtown, the block party this year. Check Into Cash, one of our sponsors, is giving away $1,000. Go to facebook.com/checkIntoCash and like the page for your chance to win. Jones Properties also is having a contest. The winner gets a $250 rent credit. Go to facebook.com/Jones Properties Tennessee, like the page, and enter the contest. Bob Cash with Check Into Cash will be live tweeting during the Halloween block party Wednesday evening. Go to twitter.com/CheckIntoCash and keep up with the happenings. Anyway, big event downtown Cleveland tonight. Be careful, everyone. It's Halloween and trick or treat. This is Steve Hickson, the Dough Man, out of here. Thanks, guys.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Now, back to more music on Whoop FM.
Oh, one last thing. Next week is the election, so if the election is held and a Democrat does lose, let's not have any protests because I'm sure the Republicans wouldn't be protesting if they lose. Bye-bye now.
It's true, I'm not an American. I mean, I was not born in Hawaii. I wasn't born in the United States of America. I come from Kenya. As the Holy Quran tells us, the Holy Quran teaches that, the Holy Quran tells us, and the Holy Quran also says,
A star